You better ask yourself one question. Are you feeling moderately lucky? Well, do ya? Bunk.
Hey guys, Sam again with Self Defense 360. Today's video is going to be part one of a two-part series for home defense. Last time we went over mostly pistols because we were talking about carry, and you can't really carry a rifle. You can, but don't do it. In today's video for home defense, I'm going to be talking about mostly long guns. When it comes to home defense, you can use just about anything you want, but long guns are always going to be inherently more accurate and easier to handle inside of a house. And when you're engaging a threat, you always want to be as accurate as possible. Now obviously, when you're defending yourself, your home, your children, whatever, whatever you have on hand is what you're going to use. So if you only have one gun and you use it for concealed carry, then you're also using it for home defense. But if you want a weapon specifically for home defense, then that's what this video is for. So as I just mentioned, in a home defense situation, you don't really want to use a handgun. The reason being is a lot of people talk with their hands. And when you have a handgun, you only have one point of contact on the gun, so it's less steady. Also, because people talk with their hands and you're yelling at someone and you're like, get out, get the whatever out of my house, you know, you're probably not maintaining your basics of marksmanship and keeping your weapon steady on target the way you need to. My recommendation is use a long gun. My number one recommendation for the long gun to use is going to be a shotgun. Now these come in both 12 and 20 gauge. 12 is the most popular and a lot of people own them for hunting or home defense or whatever. And it contains a lot of power. It's also very simple to use. Just pump and pull the trigger after taking the safety off. Obviously this one is unloaded despite the side saddle. So one of the reasons people like shotguns so much is you have a lot of loads that you can load into it. It's really the Swiss Army knife of guns. For instance, this birdshot, it doesn't have a whole lot of power. There's very little pellets in it, but there's a lot of them. The thing is, it doesn't have much penetration, which is good if you live in a house that has a bunch of kids in it and you don't want to shoot through the walls and maybe hit someone on the other side. It still hurts, it can still kill, but it doesn't have the same power as, let's say, this home defense round. This is a PDX-1 Defender made by Winchester. It contains a 1 ounce slug with 3 BBs of double up buck. Double up buck has a diameter of roughly 9 millimeters. So when you shoot someone with a full double up buck slug, then you're shooting about 9 rounds of 9 millimeter at someone at the same time. That hits very hard. So it's going to stop whatever threat you throw it at and hit. The other nice thing about this is that it's low recoil. So it still has penetration, and a 1 ounce slug hits really hard. I don't care if they're wearing body armor, you're still going to knock them on their ass. But because this is low recoil, it doesn't hit you as hard, and it doesn't penetrate as well through walls. The third option that I recommend, if you go for it, is a simple slug. High velocity, it's used for hunting, and this will hit as hard as you could ever imagine. But it does have good penetration. So make sure you watch your point of aim. Now, recoil is a big thing for a lot of people. Some people don't mind it, especially in a situation where your adrenaline's flowing, you're not really feeling anything, and if you're like a bigger dude or you can really handle the recoil, as a smaller person, then it's no big thing. So in that case, 12 gauge really does work for you. If you don't like recoil, if it throws you off, it scares you, whatever, that's understandable for the everyday person. I recommend getting a 20 gauge, first of all, which is much smaller than a 12. It does not hit as hard. And get low velocity or low recoil double aught buck. It penetrates just fine, it hits really hard, but it doesn't penetrate too much. And that's something you want to take into account. You don't want to use something like your grandpa's old 30-30 lever action or like a 308. Reason being is that those have a lot of penetration. They hit hard, but they have too much penetration for what you're working with. You're going to be in tight spaces inside of a house, and you don't want that. When it comes to home defense, you really want to balance how hard something hits and how much it penetrates, because you don't want it going through your own home into someone else's. You don't want it going through a wall out into the street. You don't want it going through a wall into someone else's room. So you want something that hits hard enough but doesn't over penetrate. So one of the other things I love about shotguns is this sound. That sound tells anyone that you don't want in your house to get out. It says it in every language, and it sends a message loud and clear. With that sound, 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to resolve whatever conflict without ever firing a shot. That being said, if you're gonna rack a shotgun, make sure you're ready to use it. So the next thing you want to look at is semi-auto rifles. There's 2 main types that are very popular. Obviously there's lots of options, but there's 2 main that are very popular. The first is something like this. This is an Wasser 10 AK-47. It's chambered in 7.62 by 39. These are hollow points. Now, this is a very reliable and pretty accurate weapon. It's very easy to use. You just pull the charging handle, take the safety off, and you're ready to go. And you'll have 30 rounds to work with. Now, it doesn't have the same penetration as like a 5.56 does, but it still hits really hard. And it will still go through walls just fine. It might not go through a whole house, but it's something to look at. This is maybe my 3rd option in my list for home defense, and that's really because it penetrates more than I would like it to. So my second choice, the reason I saved that for the last in the selection is because it's a little bit complicated to talk about. My second choice would be something like this AR-15. Now, I know this looks complicated and a little bit scary just because it's got a bunch of stuff on it, but these are actually very easy to use. They're very low recoil and they're very natural for a lot of people. So for people who don't want to deal with the recoil of a shotgun or aren't very accurate or trained up with pistols, something like this or the AK-47 is a very good choice. Only because they're simple, easy to use. You have all the rounds you need to deal with the threat, and just they're very natural. So this one looks complicated. It's got a lot of stuff on it. It is very heavy, but they come in lightweight options. What makes it complicated isn't the way it looks. What makes it complicated is that most ARs are chambered in a round called 5.56 or 2.23. These are basically souped up 22s. They're very high velocity, but they don't hit hard. The only round that I recommend for home defense is a round called 300 Blackout. It doesn't over-penetrate, but it hits very hard. So you have to make sure that if you buy an AR for home defense, no matter what configuration you put it in, that you make sure it's chambered in 300 Blackout. The only difference between 5.56 and a 300 Blackout AR is going to be the barrel and the chamber. Everything else works the same. As with any selection, I like to recommend price, because as I said in my last video, I really recommend you spend your money more on training and ammo than you do on the gun. So another reason, as I said before, about shotguns, they're probably your most inexpensive option. Between $200 to about $400, you can pick up a really nice pump action shotgun that will just work. It will run whatever ammo you put through it. AKs like this start at right around $500, $450, $500 and can just really run out from there. AR-15s, the one I showed you, I have no idea how much I put into that because I really built that one up from the ground up, but I've seen them starting around $500 and they can get really expensive. The one thing I'll say is that as long as you start in those baseline prices, your firearm's pretty much going to be reliable. Make sure you test fire it, make sure you take it to the range, find out any flaws it might have so that you can either get them fixed or get something else. Now the Yugos or the SKS that I showed before, they used to be pretty inexpensive, around $200. Nowadays they're running about $450, and hunting shotguns are still about the same price as the other shotguns, around $200 to $400. So the last thing I want to talk about is legality. Today you saw an AK-47, just a base model. You saw a very convoluted AR-15, and you saw my personal shotgun for home defense. This is a Winchester 1300 Defender. Now, in some states like New York or California, all three of those would be considered what's called an assault weapon. They're no more dangerous than any other rifle. They're no more convoluted or anything like that. But these states have very specific laws when it comes to assault weapons. An assault weapon in a rifle is anything that has a pistol grip that's not attached to the stock and a detachable magazine that's over like 10 rounds. So with shotguns, you can easily eliminate the round capacity problem. You can also eliminate the stock problem. Now, I like mine with the pistol grip stock because it's very natural to me, especially being in the military. But you can pick up something like this. This is a Winchester 1200 in 12 gauge. It is the same exact gun as the Winchester 1300. The difference is the color, the wood furniture, and the length of the barrel. Now, as you can see, this barrel is very long. I don't recommend that for home defense. You have too tight of quarters. You want to make sure you get like an 18-inch barrel, which is the shortest legally allowed in all states. And you'll have no issues. It'll have a 5-round capacity too. You can load it up with whatever, and it's pump action, so you have no ammo limitations. except for maybe shell length. Some shotguns have different shell lengths that they accept. Make sure you buy the proper ammo for that. When it comes to rifles, let's say you have something like this. This is a Yugoslavian SKS. The Chinese make them, the Russians make them. The magazine is attached. Holds 10 rounds plus one in the chamber. And it's semi-automatic, chambered in 7.62 by 39, which is the same round that the AK is chambered in. So if you live in a state where they have weird laws regarding the type of firearms you're allowed to buy, maybe consider something like that. You'll have no issues and it'll be really easy to purchase those. People won't look at you weird if that's what you decide to defend your home with. So in closing, what you need to know about home defense is that you want to balance power and penetration. You need to make sure that what you're using is comfortable for you, as well as considerations for what's comfortable for anyone else in the house who might have to use this, and the legalities you're working with in whatever state that you have, because that's going to determine kind of what you can and can't use. There's going to be more coming. I'm going to talk about more options and maybe some alternative things that you might not have thought of. Until next time, live long and prosper.